Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Influencing Right with Tracy. Our guest for today is from California, USA. She grew up in Sweden but moved to the US for high school. She's also a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. Recently, during the pandemic, she was diagnosed with stage 3 synovial sarcoma, which is a type of cancer. But instead of letting herself drown in depression and letting it overcome her, she decided to create a platform to raise awareness and share her journey on social media, especially TikTok. So today she's here with us. She's going to tell us about her journey so far and share her story with us. Everyone, say hi to Natasha. Hello, Natasha. Welcome to Influencing Right to Tracy. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
This is Influencing Right to Tracy, where we share our stories about our various lives and things that we go through so that we motivate others who are going through similar situations. So I'm glad to have you. I'm really excited. I've seen your story, I've read your story, I've watched your story, and I'm really happy that you can be here today to share it with others. So before we get into anything else, the very first thing I want to ask you, how are you? How are you feeling? Are you okay emotionally, physically? How are you?
I think I'm pretty good. A little tired. Well, that's because I woke up early for physical therapy.
Oh,
Because I have to um still work on getting my flexion back because the tumor that I had in my leg kind of made everything very hard when it comes to walking. And then now that it's gone, it's still hard to like get back to what it used to be like 2 years ago.
that's quite difficult. I think I give you the credit for being so strong and going through something like this and still seeing you so energetic and moving. It's really inspiring. So I wanted to know, uh, you were actually diagnosed July 2020, right?
Yes.
That's like in the midst of the pandemic. It was a very difficult time for everyone already, and you had to be given such news. When did you realize this was cancer, and what was your exact reaction? Take us back to that moment when you were told this is what you're going to be dealing with.
Um, at first, like I think cancer didn't really cross my mind. Like I made like one quick comment about it, like because so I have had knee problems for a while now. It started when I started playing basketball and whatnot. So I had like two surgeries on my left leg because my cartilage was weak and like broke off. And then my right leg started hurting after my surgery in 2018, like when I was in college on my left leg. So I was like, okay, it's probably because I overused my right leg. And then I got an x-ray and the doctors in Philadelphia were like, oh, it's probably this. So like we'll give you an injection and then you'll continue on with physical therapy. And that didn't work. And I was just like, okay. And I at first just like was focusing on graduating because it was my senior year. So I was just like, okay, well, I'll just manage the pain. But then it got worse. And it was I want to say fall of 2019. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go to an orthopedic surgeon. And I would like talk to him, and he was just like, okay, physical therapy. And then he was like, okay, we did an MRI, and he's just like, oh, I see that like there's some damage in there. I can go in and like clean it up. And he's like, and then like he's like, this is nothing to worry about. This is probably just like a cyst, like liquid. Um, and I'll try to poke it and like aspirate it and like in February 2020, he tried doing that and it obviously didn't work. And he still thought it was a cyst, even though it was hard. And later I found out that was the tumor. But I thought like everything was fine still. I just thought that my knee was like swelling up for some reason because like something was broken in there or something was happening. And then I like the pandemic came in full swing, like right about when I was recovering from that surgery. And I tried like asking him for a biopsy, but he was kind of like the pandemic was happening, so like there was like issues about seeing patients and like and they were like focusing on COVID, and it was kind of like I was like, okay, I'll just like wait a little bit, just continue going to physical therapy or whatnot, because that's what he told me to. Because I was like, I had no reason to think like anything was wrong, because like he didn't share that with me. And then in July, I got a biopsy, and then when I got the biopsy, like there was like something wrong, just because like the person tried to like aspirate, and I was just like, no, it's not liquid. And then they had to like go and like get tissues, and they're like, oh, what is this? Like they had never seen anything like it. And I was just like, oh, that does not sound good. And then at first I was like a little worried, but like I didn't let my mind go there. So when I got the news on July 28th, 2020, I was like in the doctor's appointment, and he was just like, I was like, so what was it? He's like, a tumor. And I was like, in my head, I was just like, oh, I hope it's benign. Like, because like he said it like, so like, whatever. And then he was like writing, he wasn't even looking at me. And he's like, I'm transferring you. And then I was like, so what kind of tumor is it? And he's just like, synovial sarcoma. You can Google it. And like, he was just like so rude about it. And I like my mom was saying like it's probably because like he knows that he messed up. Because like in my MRI, which I found out after I was done with him, it said that like, oh, might want to check for synovial sarcoma based on like the cyst, but like you need a biopsy for that. And he just ignored that, just I think because he wanted to make money and just like do the things that he could do. So that was like really bad. But like when I heard it, like as soon as he said sarcoma and I started Googling it, like the first thing that comes up is like rare and aggressive cancer. And I was just like, and like I started like tearing up, and I was like trying to hold it in. And he was just like not looking at me. He was just like, he's like, okay, I transferred you. And then I was just like, he's like, you can go in the front desk and like get your scans if you like, so you can get it to like the new doctor. And I was just like crying. And as soon as I like opened the door and like left and went into my car, it was nonstop crying. I just like tears down my face. I was like, I'm too young, like I'm not ready, and like I haven't done all the things that I want to do, because like this was at the time where I was just like, oh, I'm gonna like apply to jobs in New York and move to New York and start my life. And then this happened. It was just like a speed bump. Well, not just a speed bump, but it was bigger than that. I was just crying and bawling. And then I like came in the door, and like my mom and my brother were like watching TV, and I was like, my mom was like, what's wrong? And I was like, I have cancer. And I like screamed. So I like scared my little brother. And my mom was like in shock, but I think she was just like, she's like, calm down. Like you're scaring your little brother. Cause my brother started crying after that, because he didn't know what was happening. Because he was scared of like how like the state I was in. And then I went into my room, and I just like cried and cried, and and I think my mom was like in disbelief. And yeah, it was a hard day, a hard day. I don't even know how I got home from the doctor's appointment, because like it was just tears and foggy, and I couldn't see the road, but I still made it home somehow.
I can imagine. In fact, I can't imagine. I shouldn't say I can't imagine, because I've never really found myself in such situation. But genuinely, I can, let's say, imagine how scary that must be, because you're quite young. And as you said, you've reached a point where you want to start your life and, do stuff. And you are hit with this news that, can hinder that life, that picture, that vision that you've seen of yourself. I can't imagine how you felt at that moment. And for you to be sitting here today and telling us this, I feel like you are probably one of the strongest person I met, and I must give you credit for that.
Thank you.
So yes, that's so amazing. So was there a reason, was there a cause that he gave you? Is it genetic? Is it something in your diet? Did they give you any reason?
Well, he obviously knew like nothing about cancer, so that's why he was just like, okay, off my service. But
Oh,
um I asked like my doctors, and with synovosarcoma, they don't know why. Like there's just like a set of I guess genes that just like mutate weirdly, and then you like sometimes it develops into synovosarcoma, sometimes it doesn't, and that's what happened with me. And they like I looked up and tried to find like a reason for it happening, and they're like there there's no they don't know. And I think that that's what the hardest part was about synovosarcoma, is because it is rare, so like there isn't much data on it. There's not a lot of like research on it compared to like breast cancer, for example. So like when I found out that I had synovosarcoma, I was just like, well, F this, because I was just, it just sucks to have a rare cancer, because like there's, when you look up things, like they're like, oh well, you know, it could be like the ranges are like really big. They're like, well, survival could be anywhere from like 20% to 76%. It depends. And I'm like, that's such a big range. And like they like there's no like consensus on anything really, because it's still like only affects 1 to 2 million, 1 to 2 people in a million. Um, so I was just like, gosh, like, because like with like breast cancer, there's like methods, and like they know exactly what to do and what not. But then when it comes to, well, most sarcomas, it's just, it isn't as researched because
That's
there's not a lot of cases. Yeah.
that's very, very strange and scary. So it's just like a rare disease, and it can, let's say, anyone can be a victim of it without any specific reason, without any way to tell you that you can avoid it. Nothing. It's just
Yeah.
rare, and it can come to anyone at any time.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, the one thing that they know is it usually happens in like young adults. For some reason, like it's just like young people getting it. And I was just like, well, that's not a good thing.
Right?
Like they were like,
Right?
at
That's
age
not good.
15 to 40, like that's when most like the ages most people with synovosarcoma are. So I was like, well, that sucks. But it's also like my mom was trying to find like um good things, so she was like, well, at least like you're young enough to like fight it, like you have like, you know, some spirit and stuff. And I found that out more so like when I was in the hospital for chemo, because I was like walking around, like sometimes they encourage you to take walks because chemo makes you feel like a pile of garbage. But I was like walking around, and I would like look in other people's rooms, and it was just a bunch of old people, and they looked like they were like close to death, because like chemo was really taking them out. And like it took me out too, but like they like, I think it's worse on people that are older. And with chemo I had to like check my heart and stuff to make sure like my heart could take it. So like I imagine for older people it's like it will be a bigger toll on them because like their hearts are older. But yeah.
Yeah, it was a good thing that you're quite young enough to fight it. I think that's very good. That's one thing that's positive, as your mom said, that you can count on. So you have been very strong, very, very positive. I wouldn't say that because I'm not, I'm saying that based on what I've seen. I'm not in your shoes to know what you go through internally. But from what I've seen outside, you've been strong. You've even created a platform to raise awareness. I've seen your TikToks. You try to stay positive and give people that kind of energy to stay motivated. Would you say that has helped you through your journey so far? Is that something that has helped you?
Yes, it has, because with the pandemic and everything, it was hard finding support groups. But then I found like an online support group, and it was just a bunch of old ladies like with like cancer, and like none of them had like rare cancer, and like they all were like in like this like part of their lives where like they had husbands or wives, and like I just couldn't like relate to them so much, because like I don't know. It was just we were like in different points in our life, and I looked for a young adult group, but like the one that they had was like disbanded, and I was just like, oh, like I really like wish I had like someone to talk to that was like young like me. And then like I turned to TikTok, and then I found some like online friends that like were um teens or young adults that also like went through cancer. And like there's like one person, she's currently she also has I think her cancer might be even rarer than mine, but I found her through TikTok, and I was just like, ooh, follow back, and then follow on Instagram. And it's just like, it's first it made me sad because I'm like, why are all these like young people getting cancer? But then it also made me feel like not alone. And I think like when I like made my videos and stuff, and like the first one blew up or something, I was just like, and people were like, oh, I went through this like also. And then like if I like other people were like, oh, I also had synovial sarcoma when I was like in my 20s. And it like felt better, like it felt less alone, because even though like my mom was like with me through it all, like she's not going like through it like personally like, well, she is like, but like she's cut from another perspective, like she sees her daughter struggling. But like, you know, it's hard like talking to your friends and stuff sometimes because like they don't know how to act. And like I'll like make like I the hardest part was just like telling people, and then they started crying, and I'm like, well, I'm the one with the cancer. But yeah, I was just like, and then like I would make jokes about the cancer, and like my friends would be like, uh which is like, you know, very on brand for me, because I'll make jokes about anything that's uncomfortable. um but yeah, TikTok made it like easier and stuff, and I kind of wish that I had gone live earlier like in my chemo journey, because I went on live, I think my last round, because I was just like, oh, let me go on live. And people were like, oh my gosh, like, hi. And like people like, and I was like, had someone to like talk to, and people were like asking questions. So like it made the time go faster. And yeah, it was nice to like have something to focus on. Because like some days were hard, and some days like out of nowhere I would just like break down and cry for like 2 hours. And then my mom's like, what's happening? I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. She's like, it's okay, it's okay. And then like even after my surgery, I was still like so done with it, because like knew I had like more chemo to go, and I was like, I don't want to do this. I just want to stop. And she's like, you can do it. I'm like, I know, but I just don't want to have to, you know? And then people are like, oh, you're so strong and whatnot. I'm like, I don't want to be strong. I want to not have cancer. I want to like not go through this. I want to just be a normal person in their 20s, that can, you know, not worry about everything. And then with the pandemic happening and stuff, I was like, before when the pandemic first happened, I'm like, oh, it's fine. Cause like, I'm like, if I get COVID, like I have a strong immune system. And then cancer said, no, not anymore. So like now my immune system is like kind of shaky. I mean, like it's back up now a little more, but like it used, I think used to be way stronger. So now I'm gonna just be like immunocompromised, and like I have to like worry more about, you know, being around people. Like I'm fully vaccinated, but like they don't know how effective the vaccine is with people that are immunocompromised. Like because like all the studies are like with people that are healthy or like people that like don't have pre-existing conditions. So I'm like, okay. And then like when the CDC was like, oh, you don't have to wear masks anymore, I'm like, can people wear masks around me? And then like, you don't have to social distance. I'm like, I don't want people close to me. But at least the good thing now is like that I'm done with chemo and I'm in remission. So that, you know, at least I'm not as vulnerable as I used to be, but it's still scary when thinking about you know, COVID. I mean, like they're getting it under control now with everyone getting vaccinated, but you know, it's still a bigger risk to me than a normal person.
Right. When I first saw your video, the first thought that came to my mind was, we already have the pandemic to deal with. How can someone else have this kind of, you know, situation to deal with alongside the pandemic? The pandemic is enough to deal with already. There are a lot of things going on, and we all have to face this. And being this young, and you have to deal with the pandemic and then this, I'm like, she's really strong. But as you said, if I'm actually in your situation, I wouldn't want to be strong. I would just not want to be in that situation. So
Yeah.
we outside, we look at you, we see you on social media, we see you doing your stuff, and we are like, oh, she's pretty strong. And she's really amazing dealing with this, and she's still so outgoing. We don't know what you personally are going through. And you might not want to be in the situation, but sometimes maybe you end up in the situation so that you can be a motivation to others, you can be an inspiration to others. You creating this platform, I personally am not going to through chemo, but I can through cancer, sorry, but I can easily use the situation to be an inspiration to me, whatever I'm going through. Looking at someone as young as me being able to um, go out there, put herself out there, even with everything going on around her. Some people just fold themselves in and hide somewhere and don't want anyone else to see them till the whole situation is over. But you were bold enough to bring yourself out there and try to connect with other people that have been in similar situations. That alone is quite brave. And maybe you might not realize it, but trust me, others like me are going to look at you or are looking at you and being like, I think whatever situation I'm going through, I can handle it because look at her. She's amazing. She's being strong and she's going through all of this on her own with the pandemic and all. I think I can handle my personal situation too. So I think you are being an absolute motivation to everyone out there watching you. Even if you don't see it, trust me, you are being a motivation out there. So being out there, as we said, and we are saying out there on social media, um, have you received any form of negativity? I know mostly people are being so positive towards you because they are trying their best to keep you up, but have you received any sort of negativity?
Yes, it actually happened when I was in the hospital. So like I was just like, oh, this is just not the time. I was like making a video, which was like a joke based on like how like on like atheist people, which is like I I technically am. Um, but because like it was with the audio that was like, oh, I love God, do you love God, what's wrong with you? And I was just like, oh, like me like an atheist, like when I like find out like I have cancer, like ooh, I'm like, hey, like because like sometimes like when you know you get into like hard situations and stuff, you're like, I was like what if I'm wrong about like God, the world, and religion? So you're like hey, sorry about everything. But it was just like making a joke about that. And then some people, some toxic Christians, which exist, they're like, oh, you're mocking an entire religion. I'm like, no, I was mocking, you know, like the tendency of like some atheist people to like, you know, be like, oh, I'm just kidding, you know, like when something hard happens, and then they're like still mocking. And then so, like I was just like, oh, like I didn't want to like for people to like be offended by this. I wanted to like people to like laugh with me because like that's like all I ever want to do. And then some people were like, oh, I hope your cancer is terminal. And then someone's like, oh, I'm gonna buy a coffin for you. And then like I went on live, and then someone was just like, Black Lives Matter, but not yours. I actually thought that one was funny, funny. Um, but like when people are like, oh, like, um, you're gonna see God soon, like insinuating that I'm gonna like die. And I'm like, actually, my cancer is not terminal as far as I know. So it's just like people, it was like mostly like I looked at their profiles, so it was like kind of like bots and like people that are just trolls or like don't really, you know, show their faces and stuff. So I'm like, oh, it's easy for them to like just be out there and like, you know, and like I wasn't too offended about people like saying like, oh, like hope it's terminal or like, you know, hope you die, because I was just like, well, that's a horrible thing to say to anyone. So I'm like, I'm not going to take that personal. So I would make jokes about them wishing death on me. But then there were like some people that were just like, I don't know, I feel like the amount of people like arguing in the comments, like it like came like it was like atheists versus like the Christians, and then like whatever, blah blah, and then like there were like some like most people were like nice. like there were some people like, I'm Christian, and like I'm like, and I thought this was funny. I'm like, thank you. And then they're like, I'm praying for you. I'm like, thank you, because like, and then they're like, don't. Someone's like, don't pray for her. Like, she doesn't believe it. And I'm like, well, no one knows who's right. Like in the grand scheme of things, like we don't know what happens with us when we die. So I'm just like, it's good. Like if someone showing support and love through praying, then like I'm like, yes, I'll accept any support and love I'll get. Like just because I'm like, and then I'm like, and then there were like people that were like super nice, but then there are some people that were just, yeah, I just didn't. It was annoying, like getting the notifications of people like arguing and stuff, and I just like, part of me was just like, should I like delete the video or like make it private? And then I was just like, no, because like that would insinuate that I'm wrong. I'm like, I'm not wrong for like feeling what I'm feeling. I'm like, the only person I was like mocking in that video was me. And then like people are like, you don't have to apologize, and I'm like, but it's just like, I know that you can't please everyone, but like it took a while for me to wrap my head around that. But yeah, and then I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna delete the video. And then I'm like, maybe I should like take away the comments, and I'm like, no, because like I'm like,
It was gonna make it seem wrong.
yeah,
The moment you
yeah,
take away the comment, it means you actually knew what you were doing and that's what you intended.
yeah. So I
So
was just like, no, I'm gonna let it be. And yeah, like right now, like my comments are fine. Like that's not a lot of hate towards me, I think. But like that one would really just like, and I like would see other people like they made like similar jokes, but like not with like cancer, but they were like, oh, like my atheist ass, like whatever, when like there's turbulence on the plane. And I'm like, haha. And then everyone in those comments are like, haha, funny, funny, funny. But then for some reason in my comments, people are wishing death on me. And I was like, I made the same joke, but like about something even worse, cancer, and you're gonna attack me?
you know, I think your sense of humor is very good. I don't know of others, but I think some people are just sensitive. I'm a Christian actually, and I saw your video. I actually thought it was funny. I actually laughed. I saw that particular video and I laughed about it. I'm like, what is this girl up to? Aren't you supposed to be like lying down or something? She's here making jokes about this. And I actually laughed at it all. And I read some of your comments actually, and I saw some people, basically, it was just arguments amongst people. So I think people are just sensitive these days. There are some stuff that you can't just take it that serious. And I'm a Christian, and if someone doesn't have my belief, it's two things. It's either if I know that I can convince them to believe what I believe, I let them be, but I don't hate on them because after all, in the end, even in Christianity, we are not taught to hate anyone, no matter what they believe or
Yeah.
who they are. So me hating someone because they don't believe what I believe is actually going against what I believe, and that doesn't make sense to me. So it's two ways. I either, if I know I can convince you to believe what I believe or understand what I believe in, I'm going to do that. If I know I can't, I'm going to let you believe it. And I'm not going to hate on you. You are still human like myself. There's nothing wrong with that. That's
It
your
was very interesting because like people were like assuming that I like hadn't read the Bible, that I hadn't like, I'm like, I went to church every Sunday when I was young. Like I'm not like just like, I haven't always been this way. Like I went to church. I even went to Sunday school. And like I liked Sunday school the first year, not the second year, because I became serious. And I feel like my second year of Sunday school, that's when I like started like realizing that I didn't really like believe in things and stuff. But when I was younger, I was just like, I'm like, I know the teachings of God. Like, I'm like, I know the Bible. Like, I'm like, you don't have to like lecture me. Like, I know the stories. I know the lessons. And I'm like, and therefore I know that you're wrong for hating someone. It's love thy
right.
neighbor, like no matter what. I'm like, you're not the one that is supposed to judge people. It's God. I'm like, and I was like, and by you, judging me, it's like you're making a mockery of him because you're like I'm like, you're not his prophet.
Yes.
Like I'm like, you're not out here being Moses, you're not out here being Jesus. I'm like, you're not, you're just a person. I'm like, you can't like come out here and just like think that
Yeah,
you
that
can
makes absolute sense.
dictate
We
it
we are
towards
not
them.
taught to do that in no way. No true Christian is taught to hate on someone because they don't have the same belief that you have. You don't
Yeah.
hate on the person. If you do that, you're actually even going against the whole idea of Christianity. So I think that was pretty wrong. And let's talk with all the negativity, even with the negativity aside, with all that you've been through, was there a point that you actually thought you were going to give up, that I can't do this? Did it
Um,
get to that point?
no, because I feel like I was always gonna like go through with like treatment and everything. It's just like there were times like where I wanted to give up, but I knew I wasn't going to. Just like I just had that feeling where it's just like I felt hopeless, I felt weak, I felt like like I wasn't in control. And it just, but it was never like, oh, I am consciously like thinking about like
You know,
giving up. Like it was more like a I wish I could, you know. Um and yeah, I was just like, well, this is the treatment plan, and like it was like nothing about it that like was like, oh, I shouldn't do it. Like I'm listening to the doctors and they're like, this is what's the best course of action. I'm like, okay, yes, yes, yes. And then they're like, any questions? And I'm like, but it was just like I knew I had to do certain things. So it was just like, you know, some days I just didn't want to, but it was always like, you know,
you
um,
had to.
like I knew I was gonna do it. And then some people were like, ask me like, are you gonna die? I'm like, no. I'm not planning on it. And then like people are like, I'm like, what does the doctor say? I'm like, for now, like, you know, we're just going through the motions. And I was like, I'm not thinking about dying. I'm like, so you shouldn't think about me dying either. I'm like, I'm like, if that ever happens, like, we deal with it when it happens. But right now, I'm just focusing on, you know, chemo and surgery.
Yeah, I think the best thing you did was never even thought of dying, because I've seen people that when they are diagnosed of a sickness, or I've heard of people that the thought of dying actually kills them before the sickness does. Like
Yeah.
it really gets to them. They every moment of the day they feel like, I'm gonna die, this is gonna kill me. And that attitude, it builds up in you, and it actually maybe might end your life before the sickness does. So the fact that you didn't even get that mindset, and even at some point maybe you didn't feel like it, but you knew you were going to, I think that thought kept you in the right state of mind, and it was very important for what you were going through. It was very important. So anyway, so far have uh would you say that this has changed your life in any way, or maybe the way you see life, this whole situation that you've dealt with?
Um, I feel like it's changed my behavior a little bit because like before I was always the type of person that would always put everyone else's need ahead of mine. I would always just like worry more about other people than myself. And then like there were like, and I would like always like try to be there for other people at my own expense. Like if it like meant like hurting myself in the process, I would still do it. But then when I had cancer, it was just like I got to a point where I'm just like I need to put myself first. Like I was just like, you know, and like people understood obviously, but like in my head I was just like it was hard to like even like let go of that, like, you know, I have to be um you know, there for others and not myself. Like but then I was just like, you know, I felt good about like, you know, saying like, oh, I can't talk right now because I'm sleeping or like I am emotionally not, you know, capable of doing this and this and this. And then people are like, yeah. And the thing is like I could have done that before cancer, but like it's just like I never let myself put myself first. But then like now, like I was just like, well, I have cancer. So you know, that's you're trying to survive. And then it just like made me, yeah, I feel like I'm now just like realizing more like about myself and stuff. And I'm like, because before I put a lot of emphasis on my hair and everything and like my looks and stuff. And then now I was like, honestly, let's just not think about that right now. And I was just like, I'm bald. I'm like, my hair will grow back. I'm like, that's not the worst part. Cause like some people are like, oh, losing hair was like the worst thing. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, chemo did so much worse than just losing hair. I was just like, I felt sick, nauseous, couldn't eat, like couldn't sleep. And then like when I did sleep, it was just like I would still feel tired and just like random pain everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, no, everything else was worse than losing my hair. So it was kind of like put things in perspective. And I'm like, you know what? And people are like, you can wear wigs. I'm like, yeah, yeah. I mean, it did get tiring to be bald after a little bit. I'm like, okay, my hair can grow back now. Because like it's colder to sleep when you don't have hair because it's just like, yeah. But now I have a little bit of hair on my head, so it's nice. Yeah.
I think your looks were not even close to what you would think about in that moment. You wouldn't care how you look at that moment. So you wouldn't think about your hair being out or anything like that. But yes, it gets tiring sometimes because at least if I'm going through a difficult situation, I want to look at myself and at least look a little good. Maybe that might give me a little courage, but seeing myself look all down and drained and pale, it might not be a good sign to me. But it was good that you went through all of this so that you can realize what to pay attention to more or who to pay attention to most, and that's yourself. Because when you go through things like that, you realize that at that moment you actually needed people. You see, you were going to find support groups and all of that, and you had your friends. These are people that you've been there for whenever they needed you, but in your situation they wouldn't understand you. So you needed yourself more at that moment than you needed anyone else. And that is what is important. The fact that through it all you were able to find yourself out of it. You realize that, look, I have to see about myself. When somebody calls you, you needed your sleep, and it was right that you told them that I can talk right now, I have to sleep. Before, you wouldn't do that, right? You would want to be there for them, even if that's not what you want, but you want to, you know that that's what they want, so you want to serve that purpose for them. So it was important that this situation was able to help you at least find yourself. And I pretty much think that's the important thing about the whole situation. So I saw a video of you recently that you were announced or you were declared cancer free. Yes, I saw that video. I was so excited. And we had already talked about this interview already. We knew you were coming on here before I saw that video. So I'm like, that's something she has to tell us. How was it like? What's the feeling? Because my excitement can be compared to yours, and I was so excited already. So I can't imagine how you felt.
It's kind of like, I don't know, you get the scans, and like before you get the scans, you're like really like anxious, even though like you're like it's probably like fine, but like you're still like scared. But then when I got it, I was like happy. But then like it was only until like a little bit, and then I kind of like thought about it, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to keep getting clean scans, like, cause like every 3 months and then like every 6 months, because there's a 50% chance that the cancer comes back. So I'm like happy like for the little win, but then it's like I'm like I have to make sure that I just it doesn't come back. And like there's like, and like the hard part is like I'm like yes, I'll like try to be healthier and whatever, but like with this cancer, I'm like I feel like it just can pop back up like no matter what you do. So that's kind of like disheartening. But I'm like trying to, you know, just hope for the best and like stay positive. But it's like it's still that like 50%. And I'm like 50-50. And then like I did the bad thing the other day of like looking up like the stats for like if you get synovial again, and
Oh,
the
you get
prognosis is really bad. So I was
no,
like,
you
okay, I
didn't.
can't get it again.
Oh,
So yeah, they're like poor prognosis. I'm like, I should not have looked that up. But it's also like, yeah, me just thinking, and I'm like, if I like, and then I'm like, okay, so like, what's the time frame for like recurrence? And like the median time is like 2.5 years, and I'm like, okay. And then in my head, I'm like, I have 2.5 years to live life in case. And then I was just like, you know what? I should just, you know, not be scared to do things and just like, you know, so like if I do get it back, I'll just be like, you know what? At least I took some chances. But yeah.
now I think that's like a ray of light in the darkness. It's better than none.
Yeah.
It gives you hope. I think it's better to know that you are free now, even if there's the possibility of you getting it later, but at least now you know you are free from it. That's like a ray of light. It's better than you not knowing at all whether it's in the system or it's not. But at least at the moment, you're aware that this is not in my system. There's a
Yeah.
possibility it might come, maybe later, 5 years, 2.5 years, how many years from now. But right now, this very moment, it's not in my system. That's like a ray of light. That's a very good thing. So at this moment, as you said, you can live life to the fullest. Whether it's going to return or not, it doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
Right now, what matters is that you are free. And I was so excited when I saw that video. And I'm like, I'm so excited for her. I can't imagine her excitement. But I understand you being worried. It's better to be worried. That will keep you careful whether it might return or not. But I feel like in this moment, just live it. Just accept the fact that you are clear from that burden, whether it's going to return or not, but be clear from it and just enjoy your excitement. So finally, I just want to know, what will you say to anyone who is going through something like this, watching you right now and listening to your journey, your story so far? What would you tell them?
Um, I guess it's just to it's okay to feel all the emotions. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to, you know, make decisions that might not like be close to what you would do before. But and I would also say that don't try too hard to um you know, force yourself to be positive, because you shouldn't force any emotion. You should just like let yourself be in your feelings, because if you start suppressing them, um the journey will definitely be harder. And don't be afraid to ask for help. And one good thing is, when you do have cancer, don't be afraid to use the cancer card. Like, you shouldn't feel guilty, because um, I did this thing where I used the cancer card to get a table at a restaurant when it was like full, and I like pretend like it was just like this whole thing. And then like my friends were like, "Oh my gosh, why did you do that?" And then like they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're so like wild." And I'm like, "Well, you know what's worse than lying to this person? Having cancer." So it's just like, you know what? They had a table. They just said they were full. So I'm like, I don't feel bad. So just like don't. And I mean, like, I would say going through it, just celebrate the small wins, because, um, there's going to be a lot of hard situations and bumps in the road. So even if like the win is like, oh, you can finally eat something without throwing it up, like that's a huge W. Like you should be happy. Like it's not weird to like just be like, oh, I was able to eat today, you know, that's good. And like make sure that you employ all the help you can. Don't let yourself feel the pain if you can, like as in like the physical pain, like if you're given medications or other treatments to help, like do take them. Like you shouldn't have to be more pain than you already are in. And yeah, just know that you are a survivor, the moment you get diagnosed, because you're surviving every day with your diagnosis and with your cancer.
Yeah, that's pretty much I think that's it. That's everything that you can say to someone, because I have not been in your situation. I cannot relate to it, but I feel like that's the best thing you can tell someone, especially celebrating every win. Aside being diagnosed with a chronic illness, I feel like any other situation that someone goes through in life, any difficult situation, whatever little ray of light you see in that darkness, whatever small positive thing that comes out of it, celebrate it. I think that lessen the burden. It makes you feel a lot more better than not being able to see the little things, that the little positive and the little good things that are coming out of it, and just burdening yourself with just the whole situation as a whole. Um, like you said with the cancer, oh, I have cancer, I have cancer every day with that thought. I think it becomes a burden on you. But if you're able to celebrate, oh, I could eat today, the little things that comes with it, if you're able to celebrate that, I feel like it lessens the burden, and it helps you to become stronger to go through whatever you are going through. So I'm so glad to have you here today to share your journey with us, to tell us about your story. It is amazing, and I'm proud of you. I'll admit, since the moment I saw your video up to date, I'm so proud of you. I can't imagine the strength that you have, even though you might not want to be strong. But I personally, I'm so proud of you, and I love the fact that you came up to it. You looked it in the face, literally, and told it, "Look, this is my life, and I'm the one in charge." I love that spirit, and I feel like everyone else watching this will take that energy, that positivity, and at least use it one way or the other in their lives. So thank you guys. That was Natasha with us here from California, USA. You heard her story, how she dealt with cancer during the pandemic. It has been a really rough one for her, but she has been strong and positive through it all. And she has created a platform to share that positivity and that motivation and inspiration. I'm going to link her social media handles, send her a message, even though at the moment she's more focused on herself, but she's still willing to help anyone out there, especially if you are going through similar situations. So I'm going to, link her social media handles below, send her a message on Instagram, message her on TikTok, be positive about it. And she's going to talk to you and, just vibe, keep the positive energy. So I'll see you guys soon where we play the game of spell it backwards. See you. Bye.